Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. Thanks for attending. My name is Amber Pierce and I'll introduce myself more in just a moment, but I want to take the time to thank you all for coming and watching our webinar tonight, joining us online. This webinar is Finding Your Paradise. It's about investing, living, working, retiring in Mexico. And it's the very first of our webinar series that we're planning for 2017. So thanks for joining us on our very first one for this year. The idea behind this webinar in particular is we get asked questions every day in our office, sort of the same series of questions, and everybody has to kind of work through these in their head if they're thinking about renting, snowbirding long-term down here, buying a place. Before you can even get to that, people need to know, what are the medical services like? Do I need a visa? Can I drive a car? There's all sorts of things like that. And we've got to kind of answer all those questions before people feel comfortable moving on to going, yeah, this is really doable. Let's rent or let's buy. And so this initial webinar is to address those questions for people that are just kind of sticking their toes in the water and thinking about, doing Mexico longer term or full time. And so really that's where this one came out of. We will be going on and really getting deep in the weeds on other topics later. This one's to really answer all those frequently asked questions, all those FAQs that we get on a regular basis. As a way to introduce myself, I want to first tell you about my company, Mayan Riviera Properties. I established Mayan Riviera Properties in 2005, and we specialize in the area of Puerto Morelos, Mexico. Now, I know that you all come from a background of having varied interests in Mexico, okay? I've got some people on the webinar that are interested in Puerto and the Riviera Maya, others that are interested in Pacific Coast locations. No matter, but I want to let you know kind of what we do in our background and my personal background so that you feel like you can use me as a sounding board and really pick my brain about things. In the office, we specialize in real estate sales, vacation rentals, property management, and also condominium association management. And so from a perspective of those services, we have a really good idea of what happens before a sale, during a sale, and then what homeownership is like after a sale. And I think that really gives us a great place to be selling property, because it's not like we're interested in selling you a property and then dumping it on you and you don't have to work with us again. Our goal is to, if we can be involved in the sale of your property, great, and we certainly hope that we have earned your business in property management. So I like real estate companies that do all those services because number one, excuse me, number one, it gives you a really good idea and base to work from understanding homeowners' needs and what works in a house and what doesn't, what rents in a house and what doesn't. So it makes us great agents. But the other thing it does is it, certainly incentivizes an office to provide great service. So that is our background, and we do that work in Puerto Morelos, which is just south of Cancun on the Mayan Riviera coast. I am federally certified by Conocer, which you see there. Conocer is a federal certification agency. I am federally certified to sell real estate in Mexico. I'm also federally certified to sell real estate in Mexico's tourist zones. So I have both of those federal certifications. We are a member of AMPI. AMPI is that logo that you see down there on your left. We'll get into more of that later, but it's the National Real Estate Association in Mexico, and so we are members of that. In the center there, that Profesional Inmobiliario Certificado, that indicates that I'm a certified realtor with those federal certifications I just mentioned. And then I'm also an international member of NAR. NAR is the National Association of Realtors in the United States. That is the blue R that you see, and I'm an international member of that organization. This is me. If we haven't met, hello. My name is Amber Pierce, and I'm originally from Michigan. I'm a graduate of Michigan State University, so go Spartans. I have two children. My boys are, my youngest, Easton, some of you may know him. He is turning 9 in May, And then I have Kaden, who is 13. And I've been visiting Puerto Morelos since 1998, and I've been living there full-time since 2004. And I am the broker at Mayan Riviera Properties. I give you this background on myself and my family and the company because, you know, with 2 kids, I've put kids in school in Mexico. I've had children in Mexico, so I have a son that's a dual citizen. We applied for his, you know, citizenship, U.S. citizen born abroad, and his Mexican citizenship, and have solicited his passport. We've all had visas. We've all, you know, I've bought car and sold cars. I've been in the hospital. I've done all sorts of things over the time that I've lived there. And so I hope that you feel comfortable picking my brain as a resource for whatever questions you have about what it's like to live in Mexico. I also include this slide. This is Laura Zapata. She is relatively new to our office. She's our sales agent. And I include her as an introduction because if you do make contact with us, you'll very likely be in touch with Laura at some point. She's originally from Texas. She's been living in Mexico since 1996. And she's been selling real estate in our area, in the Riviera Maya, for over 20 years. She's held various positions within AMPI. We associate ourselves in the Playa del Carmen chapter. Puerto Morelos is so small we don't have our own chapter, but we're in the Playa del Carmen chapter. And Laura has been a past president of that association as well as, you know, various other roles. And I am so happy to have her in the office. Laura has been a colleague of mine for years, someone I've always bounced ideas off of, and now we have the opportunity to work together, and I'm super excited. She and I together have over 30 years experience selling in Mexico, and we were chatting about it the other day, and I'm not sure that there are 2 other people selling on the coast that have that kind of experience, so that's kind of cool, and I certainly am excited to have her in our office. Again, kind of circling back, you know, these topics that we want to go over tonight, where did this list come from? These are from you guys. These are the questions I answer nearly every day in my office. And everybody in my office knows this is my wheelhouse. What I like best about my position is educating people on Mexico, ensuring that they have a great experience, you know, kind of debunking the myths that it's, you know, the Wild West. What I want to do is give you great information, and I want you to be able to take that and apply it wherever you're interested in Mexico. But I know from experience that there are all of these questions that people have in their heads that you got to get through. It's just part of that process. You can't get to thinking about renting or buying or working or retiring or investing, whatever you've got plans to do, until you kind of get these questions answered. And so, again, this is really where this list of questions have come from. We're going to talk about Mexico's investment potential. This really answers the question, why Mexico? I get asked all the time, why Mexico? You know, what are you doing in Porto? And so Mexico's investment potential, I'm going to make the argument to you of why I feel that Mexico is a wise investment, okay? After that, people sometimes ask, where's the Mayan Riviera? And certainly we're not going to just focus on the Mayan Riviera. I want you to be able to take this information, apply it anywhere you're interested. But we'll talk about where the Mayan Riviera is because that's a question I get asked a lot. One thing that I included in here is why Puerto Morelos? And I want you to understand where I'm coming from with that question. Number one, people do ask me when they get to a little bitty fishing village in Mexico, how did you end up here, right? So I want to answer that question and what drew me to Porto. But I also included in this webinar realizing that the minority of people in this webinar are going to be in Puerto Morelos. I hope that you find wherever in Mexico makes you happy, and I think that there is such a variety, there's a place for everybody. But I include this, and I'm going to talk about it because I'm going to tell you what appealed to me on a personal level and on an investment level. And then you can take those considerations and think about what's important to you. And maybe I bring up stuff that you hadn't thought about before. And if that's the case, that's great. Okay, but I really, that's getting to, you know, I can't tell you firsthand information about what it's like to live in Mazatlan, although I'd love to, okay, but I just haven't had the opportunity to do it. But I can tell you what firsthand information is like living in Puerto Morelos, and you can start making those decisions. Yeah, you know, when I look, I want to make sure I find something with that, or, oh, that doesn't really matter to me. I would rather look for something with there. So that's really what that discussion is about. I always get the question, can you own property in Mexico? We'll get the short answer to that, and then the follow-up question is, well, if you can, is it a safe investment? So that's where the is my investment secure question comes out of. then people start thinking about it. And they say, well, how long can I stay in Mexico? Do I need a special visa? You know, do I have to be a citizen? How can I work down here? Maybe, you know, you're working abroad or, you know, remotely, or you want to work in Mexico itself. How are the medical services? Okay, if you're going to live here full time, you know, is it safe to go to the hospital? What are the hospitals like, etc.? And if you start kind of turning around to thinking that you want to find something to rent or to buy, well, how do you find a real estate agent? Okay, so these are the most frequently asked questions. We've done this seminar different times. We've added and dropped questions from the list, and we've come up with this core of questions that really seems to be at the heart of what people need to know before they can start making any decisions about where they're interested in. And so we come to you with this information and also the invitation. Please ask if you have any other questions that I don't end up covering tonight. I am happy to answer them and to the best of my ability. And if I can, I'll try to find the answer for you. You can't have margaritas by the pool in February with your savings account. I bring this slide to you to start thinking about Mexico's investment potential, okay? I always tell people to think about, you know, your second home, or maybe your primary home if you're thinking about living here full-time, as another item in your investment portfolio. We all have different things that we invest in. We diversify. We have stocks. We have, you know, this, we have that, whatever. The vacation home is an investment. It's you know, it's going to appreciate in value, but it's something you can also use in the meantime. And I think that's a really valid and valuable plus, right? It doesn't do you really any good to just watch a spreadsheet. Okay, eventually you want to get some use and some enjoyment out of that, and certainly you can do that with a Mexican investment. I want to give you kind of a broader framework of why I feel Mexico is a good investment. And to do that, we kind of have to familiarize ourselves with Mexico's economy and its tourism industry. I also think that it will provide you a better frame of reference, because I realize, you know, in this webinar, most people are coming to this webinar thinking about investing in Mexico from a second home standpoint, okay? If you are coming to Mexico to invest in business or in manufacturing or something like that, that is awesome. And I would love to have that conversation with you, but that's an entirely different discussion and more than you guys probably want to sit through, knowing that the majority of you are looking to be here part or full time, okay? So we're going to focus in on the tourism industry because that's really what's behind the real estate market in most of the locations you all are going to be considering, okay? So I think it'll do two things. I think it'll give you a better idea of where Mexico is going as a country, and I think it'll also give you a better frame of reference of what you want to do as far as making some decisions about real estate markets. Mexico's economy. I don't know how much you know about Mexico's economy. It's kind of surprising. In 2015, the gross domestic product was $2.2 trillion. Now, that's nowhere near the U.S.'s GDP of 17.9 trillion, but it's also more than Canada at 1.6. So that puts, you know, Mexico at number 2 as far as GDPs go for North America, and it also puts Mexico at number 15 in the list of world economies. It is the 12th largest exporter in the world, and 80% of its exports go to the U.S. Mexico's number 1 export is manufactured goods, and its 3 largest trading partners are the U.S., China, and Japan. Another huge source of income for Mexico is its oil production. It's the 8th largest oil producer in the world, and it's almost 3 million barrels a day in production. Again, kind of, that's a quick overview of where they kind of stand in the world economy. Kind of focusing in on tourism. Where does Mexico stand on the tourism stage? Who's coming? When? You know, where are they coming from? I want to kind of answer those questions for you. Overall, as a tourist destination, according to the World Travel Organization, Mexico received 32 million international tourists in 2015. So you can see that highlighted there. That places them number 9 in 2015 in rankings as international tourist destinations. In front of them are number 1, France, the United States, Spain, China, Italy, Turkey, Germany, the United Kingdom, then Mexico, and then you'll see Russia and Thailand under that. These are all of the international tourists that have come into Mexico's borders, either by land, by air, or by sea. Okay? And when you conglomerate all of those together, it puts it as number 9 on the world stage. What does that mean? Well, the foreign exchange inflow from international tourism is $17 billion. It's a significant part of Mexico's economy. It makes it the 3rd largest source of foreign exchange in Mexico, behind oil and direct foreign investment. So certainly Mexico's international tourism industry is a very significant economic impactor for Mexico. Let's talk about border entry, okay, and by air and sea. So we know that 32.1 million, okay, tourists came into Mexico altogether by all 3 means, okay? But we also know that of that number, 18.4 million came in through land borders. That leaves about 14 million, 13.7 to be exact, people that came in by air and sea. Okay, so Mexico's tourism is not just air and sea travel. It is also a significant portion of border travel, because the U.S., and we'll see this in a moment, U.S. citizens make up the largest portion of tourists to Mexico, and a lot of them cross over the borders, the southern borders of the U.S., to visit Mexico. So giving you kind of a better frame of reference of how many people are flying and sailing in versus driving across the border. 32.1 million altogether, 18.4 million of those are coming in across land borders. That leaves 13.7 coming across by air and sea. Now, I'll say that when you see these statistics that I'm sharing tonight, you don't see 2016's numbers, and that's because the website that I used to pull this information, and you see the source down there, SIIMT.com. That's a government organization website that produces these statistics for tourism industry in Mexico. And their 2016 has not yet been finalized. And because of that, it's a partial data set, and so it's hard to really make fair comparisons. I will say that pending the arrival of December's numbers in that data set, it will continue the same trend in that 2016 will have surpassed 2015's numbers in both of these categories. So we know that there's a lot of people coming in, 32 million of them, right? Where are they coming from? Well, we took a look, this website took a look at the subset of people coming in by air. So people coming in by air, where did they come from in 2015? Now, on the left, you'll see a chart that lists the countries. First, obviously, is the U.S., okay? 8.6 million people came in by air. Canada, 1.7 million, okay? United Kingdom, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, Spain, Germany, France, Peru, Italy, Chile, Venezuela, Japan, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Australia, South Korea, China, Panama, Ecuador, Holland, Switzerland, Uruguay, Israel, and others. All right, so that gives you a top 25 list of where people are coming in from. Over on the right, they've kind of got that information sectioned off into a pie chart. You can see that, North America partners, Canada and the U.S. make up well over half. 69.2% of the people coming in by air to Mexico are from the U.S. and Canada. Of that, 57.3 are from the U.S. and 11.9 are from Canada. And then the smaller section of the pie are made up of 13% Europeans, about the same of Latin America and the Caribbean, Asia, and then others. I will say that we have noticed anecdotally a big jump in South American tourists, and I think that others category, they're going to have their own slice of the pie pretty soon. So we know where they're from. Where are they going? All right, so we took the same subset of data, all these tourists that came in by air of 2015, and said, well, where did they fly into? Where they flew into the most is Cancun. Okay, the Mayan Riviera is Mexico's busiest tourist destination and busiest airport. Tourist airport. That, as you can see, that's the #1 destination for international tourism. followed by the city, Mexico City, followed by Los Cabos, Puerto Vallarta, and then the locations that you see. Incidentally, Cozumel on that list at number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is part of the Mayan Riviera. So 2 locations within the Mayan Riviera make that top 10 list. Okay, but that gives you an idea. Certainly not to discount the other locations. I've been to them. They're beautiful. I was just in Los Cabos a couple of weeks ago. But as far as volume goes, at this point, Cancun is number 1 in tourist volume. When do they get here? So we know where they come and we know where they go. When do they get here? Okay, and this might be helpful if you're thinking about renting a place. When do you plan to be here? When do you plan to rent it? Okay, really the numbers on the left make up the charts on the right. And so I'm going to focus on the charts on the right. I just want you to notice the patterns. In the US, which is up at the top, we have people now, remember, these are arrivals, okay? So we have lots of arrivals coming in November and December. These are all our snowbirds arriving to get out of the snow, okay, and holiday travelers. So November and December are really high on arrivals. It doesn't really say how long these people stay. So some might be on a short holiday. Others are coming in to stay longer term, okay? We've got more arrivals in February and March. Then you see kind of a drop off after April. May gets pretty low. There's a little bump in the summertime. And then our real off season is, you know, we're on the downhill slide at August, September, October, November. For us, you know, July through October are rainy season. And so in Cancun, that's the least likely time you're going to travel. Canadians, you guys are hardcore snowbirds. You guys are not really coming in the summertime. You guys are coming in November and December to get out of the snow, and you're staying and coming, you know, you keep coming in through March, and then you start to tail off. You guys are fair weather friends, okay? And the Europeans actually do the opposite of that. These guys get large amounts of time to travel in the summertime, and they're here in July and August. Obviously, too, you know, you see a bump up at the holidays in December, but for, you know, you see their big spike in the summer. So this gets to where is the Mayan Riviera. For those of you that don't know, that inset on the left is you know, that's the map of Mexico, and that yellow dot is where we are at. We are in the northeastern tip of that Mexican Yucatan Peninsula. All right. To our north is the Gulf of Mexico. To our south and our actual border, you know, the water that laps up on our shores is Caribbean Sea. We are unique in Mexico in that we are the coastline with the Caribbean. And this is why it becomes such a big tourist destination. It's why our beaches are so great. We've got Caribbean waters in lieu of Pacific or the Gulf waters, okay? So we've got those Caribbean beaches. The Mayan Riviera, or the Riviera Maya, if you say it in Spanish, is a span of that coastline. It goes from Cancun at the north point to Tulum, which is about halfway down that coast. It includes towns, Puerto Morelos is the next one south. There's Playa del Carmen. There's a few smaller ones, Acamal and Puerto Aventuras. You get to Tulum. And then just off of our coast is the island of Cozumel. And those make up the, quote, Mayan Riviera. Now, the coastline continues south for another ways between Tulum down to the Belize border, and that's called the Costa Maya. That gets very, very rural. There are a few towns in there, and there are certainly people that have found their way there, but that gets, you know, hours from the airport and a little bit more rural of a coast. The mass, you know, the vast concentration of activities and development is in that coast between Cancun and Tulum. Again, this is kind of showing a historical perspective of airport arrivals in Cancun. And you see just kind of continuing to slide up. Cancun grows as a tourist destination every year. These are the numbers that support that last chart. And I just put this in here to show. You'll see 2016 is still missing its December numbers. But we are already very, very close to surpassing 2015's numbers in 2016, and we haven't added that final month. So we'll definitely be over that, and that trend will continue for 2016. Now, I included flights. So we've talked about, you know, expats who are here, who's coming in, what markets, international markets are at play, and our fellow buyers. We've talked about when you all travel, okay, which is interesting to know as you kind of make your plans for travel. One thing that I would say makes Mexico a smart investment. Obviously you've got the 9th largest tourist destination. You've got, in the Mayan Riviera in particular, the largest tourist destination within that subset, okay? But not to say that there aren't some other great locations that I wouldn't be considering. One thing that you want to think about is it convenient for you to get to? And is that important? So for me, that was an important factor. That's one of the reasons we landed in Puerto Morelos, was because it's 15 minutes south of the Cancun airport, and as you'll see in a moment, you can get to Cancun from just about anywhere. The other fun thing is that you can get to anywhere from Cancun. And if you're living here full time, that's a great advantage, right? I mean, I've got nonstops to Paris 5 days a week if I want to go. And that's great living here. It also meant that it was a pretty quick flight when I flew down out of Detroit. I was 3 hours, all right? And I'm 3 to 4 hours from just about any destination in the States. Because of that, it became a popular tourist destination. Because of that, it became a very busy coast. Now that either is appealing from an investment standpoint for you, or maybe you are looking for something more remote. And therefore, if you said to me, I want to be on a coastline somewhere, I don't have a budget to be in Cancun, obviously the price goes up if the market is bigger in an area, right? So maybe you're looking at I'm going to fly down and live there, or I'm going to fly down and be there for months, and I don't care if I've got to, spend the night before I get on a plane the next morning because I'm too far from the airport. Great. Okay, the market's not going to be as big for that property. It's going to be more difficult to rent that property, but that might not be your goals, and that doesn't make that a bad thing. I just want you to start thinking about what you envision your Mexican investment looking like. And if it is to be within be able to do a long weekend or be able to have some rental income, look at the destination that you are interested in and how easy is it to get there, because that certainly makes a difference in the amount of tourism that will be there. Cancun, you can get direct flights from these locations in Canada, and those are flight times in hours. This is a partial list of the nonstop flights offered in the U.S., okay? More importantly, you'll see that the U.S. by and large ranges between 3 and 4 hours to get to Cancun from just about anywhere. Again, I would love to do this and show you these stats for each and every major tourist destination in Mexico, but we just wouldn't have time to do that, and you probably wouldn't want to sit through it. But make this a consideration. If it is a consideration for you, make this assessment on the location that you're interested in. This is Cancun from anywhere, okay? Again, you see Paris on that list. You can get there, get to there from anywhere, and you can also get to anywhere from here. I want to talk to you about why I think Mexico is a smart investment, okay? We've talked about its economy. We've talked about its growing tourism numbers. What else makes it appealing as an investment? Well, I can tell you very confidently, having sold real estate since 2005, that property has appreciated historically. I can tell you that it held very stable compared to other second home markets when the real estate markets and economies really crashed in 2007 and 2008. Why was that? I think it was a combination of things. I think the biggest factor in why Mexican real estate did not crash was that we did not have mortgages available, and we'll talk about that. But we don't have the foreclosure crisis. And what was the impact of the foreclosure crisis? Well, what happened was, let's say you had a condo building, and a few of those were owned outright and the rest of them were in mortgages. When the economies crashed, people were most worried about saving their primary homes if they could. The second home went, okay? And so there was a huge number of primary homes, but a massive number of second homes and third homes or whatever that went into foreclosure, and they went back to the banks. And when that happened, banks were, fire selling properties for a fraction of what people had bought them for. And that brought all of the real estate prices in those types of markets crashing. The flood of inventory, the flood of comparable pricing that was so low, it just crashed them. And we didn't get that. Okay, we didn't get it because people didn't have mortgages that they could give back and the banks could fire sale. And so I think that was a huge saving grace for our market. It did have a price correction. It corrected about 20 to 25% in some cases. The prices held really stable, and then they continued to go back up from there. Why else? Aside from no mortgage mess, I think that because we had cash buyers, typically people that could put together that kind of cash were maybe savers and not mortgaged to the hilt, and so, or leveraged to the hilt, and so they weathered that storm better. Okay. It definitely, the other thing is that as you've learned, there's a worldwide market, okay? Certainly there are a lot of U.S. citizens, but there's a whole lot of Canadians and a lot more Europeans, more and more all the time, that are looking at Mexico to invest. And when you can spread out the risk over a wider market, it proves to be more stable. If the U.S. economy is in trouble, we still have Canada and Europe, okay? And so you kind of work to spread out that risk. Why else is it a smart investment? Well, you can get some money back on it, okay? You can pay your overhead on it. Now, I'll tell you, and again, this is speaking from my frame of reference, check out the answers to these questions in the areas that you're interested in. What is the rental season? I can tell you in Puerto Morelos, we're primarily United States citizens and Canadians that come visit us. So as you've learned, that's Christmas through Easter, okay? So that's 16 to 20 weeks a year that we rent. All right. Now, if you have a destination that has a lot of Europeans, you're looking at more summer rentals, okay? And also winter rentals because there's the Cancuns and Canadians if you have all of them there. So that becomes more year-round, okay? Not completely year-round, but more of a year-round scenario. Is it, you know, I have people in Puerto Morelos that rent 2 weeks a year. They go home and visit their families for the weeks of Christmas and New Year and pay all their condo fees for the year. That's pretty cool, right? So what are your rental goals? Do you even want to rent? And if you do, what is the rental season and when do you want to be there? Okay. And I've got people that go, well, I want to be here in the winter and that's when we rent. So maybe they start looking at places with, you know, a separate rental unit or a duplex, something like that. So think about it because it's going to affect your eventual decisions. There are property managers to look after your property, okay, throughout Mexico. That's important. You have a tropical place. You cannot close it up like an up north cabin and come back and expect things to look the way you put them up, okay? It is the tropics. Things have to get opened and maintained. You have a property manager to be able to do that. For my Canadian viewers, okay, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but there is an estate tax issue that's a potential issue with U.S. investments that Canadians make, whereby U.S. law is pretty gray and potentially your entire estate, not just your U.S. asset, is up for a taxable estate in the U.S. if you were to ever pass away. Okay? They don't, the way the law is worded, it doesn't necessarily just limit it to that U.S. asset. Your whole estate is up for grabs on that. That has persuaded a lot of Canadians to look elsewhere for foreign investments and winter places, and Mexico has become a logical solution for a lot of them because of all the things we just mentioned as far as how easy it is to get to. Here is a huge unsung perk of your investment, and I don't think it gets nearly enough attention. If you own a home in Mexico, if you own a home in a popular location of Mexico, you can swap homes with other vacation owners. There are websites where you can do this pretty easily, and you can travel anywhere in the world and never pay another dime. And I think it's so cool. I hope that more of our clients take advantage of it, and people recognize that you're able to do that. It's affordable. Mexico is affordable. Okay, I'm going to give you the range of Puerto Morelos because that's my, my wheelhouse. But you certainly would want to ask these questions of the realtors in your areas. My oceanfront condos, a little bit about the Puerto Morelos market. Our units are built to be wintered in, long-term lived in. And so our average 2-bedroom unit is 1,500 square feet. It's a pretty big condo. That's going to differ from a 2-bedroom condo in, say, a more vacation-driven location where you might find 900 square feet, okay? So really compare square footage prices, not bedroom prices. But condos start in Puerto Morelos at oceanfront at $275 USD and range anywhere from $275 to $600,000. I'd say the majority of those are in the $275 to $400 range. Luxury units will get into the 5 and 6. Homes in town on the port side start at $250,000, but you can be a 5-minute drive from the beach in Puerto Morelos for as little as 60 to 80 grand. Okay? So there is a wide range of options in town. Oceanfront homes are typically big. We're talking about big luxury properties. They're going to start at $700,000 on the lower end and go all the way up to $1 million plus on the high end. When we're talking about Puerto Morelos is small. It's 3 blocks deep at its deepest in the port side. That means that all of this property is essentially beachfront, okay? And that's reflective of those prices. It's not like you're a 10-minute walk to the beach, okay? So again, compare apples to apples. Make these considerations where you're looking. Mexico is affordable, and one of the reasons it's affordable is it has low cost of living. It has, that factors in with low medical expenses, low property taxes. Our municipality charges 0.28% of its tax value, of the property's tax value as a tax rate. That works out to be on a $500,000 US dollar property, about $1,400 US dollars a year. Now, they even give the incentive. If you pay it, let's say the 2017's taxes, if you pay it early in December, you got a 25% discount on that rate this year. Okay? Might as well take advantage of it, but again, very, very reasonable tax rates for a $500,000 property. Why are people drawn to Puerto Morelos? We have awesome weather, okay? We are warm, and we are humid, but we're less humid in the winter, and we have cooler nights in the winter. But everything stays pretty warm, okay? As you can see, these temperatures are in Celsius, but this is our average winter. Now, that's not indicative of all of Mexico. One of my favorite locations is in the mountains of Chiapas, and it's cold in the wintertime. I say it's cold. I've acclimated to Mexico, but it's cold. It's down in Fahrenheit 50s, 40s even sometimes. So that can be chilly, all right? So look at the weather, and is it within your ideas of where you want to be? Again, this is a little bit of info about Porto. This is what drew me to Porto. That's not what might draw you to Porto, and it's not, but it might be factors that do or don't draw you to another location. So I include these so that you can start thinking about what's important to you in a location. Puerto Morelos is 15 minutes south of the Cancun airport. That was important for me. I also wanted to feel like I was in Mexico, and on our coast, Puerto Morelos is probably the most authentic Mexican atmosphere that you're going to find. Okay, it's certainly been affected by tourism, but it's hard. It's still a fishing village, and that's what I like about Porto. Okay, we do have a national park, and we have protected mangroves which surround us. That makes us a very small enclave of homes on the water. I like this small quaintness. Okay, and so that's what drew me. The national park status means that there are very restricted water activities between our shoreline and the reef, which is about 500 meters from shore. That reef is the Mesoamerican Reef. It's the second largest barrier reef in the world, next to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. It goes all the way from Cancun down to Nicaragua. But within our beaches and our park, it's at one of its shallowest points. And so they really restrict boating. You have to anchor at certain points so you don't damage the reef. They only issue a limited number of snorkeling permits per year. Private boats can come in, but they have to be at those anchor points. Very, very slow speeds. So it's really a more natural environment. It's, full of snorkelers and swimmers and kayakers. You don't, they do not allow jet skis or parasailing or any of those types of activities inside the park. There is excellent fishing. We have a full-size marina, but it's outside that reef, and our fishing grounds are 10 minutes. I mean, by the time you get the boat out and you're tackling in the water, you're fishing, which is awesome. So I like that about our beach. I like going to the beach and relaxing and reading a book and not hearing jet skis zip around, okay? But that doesn't mean or discount that if that's what you're into, or maybe you want to surf. For instance, one of the reasons I absolutely fell in love with Puerto Morelos was I had a small child, and that reef breaks our big waves and makes it more like a lake to go to, okay? I love that, and other families love that, and grandparents love that, okay? Because it makes it a really easy beach to take kids to. If you are a surfer, you're not going to like Puerto Morelos. And so there are those types of considerations, okay? What are the beaches like? For all of these reasons, I feel like Puerto Morelos positions itself as the best residential real estate values on the coast. We're this little town, slowly, slowly developing, very controlled, limited space, close to the airport, between Cancun and Playa. It's just a little jewel on the beach, and it has proven to be that since 1998. What else did I find appealing about Porto? Okay, I love that we have an active expat community, but we also have a local community. Okay, it's not just a bunch of Americans and Canadians sitting around. We've also got a lot of locals, and I like that mix. Okay, there are some people that want to move to an area of Mexico where they don't see another gringo for as long as they live. They're out there, and that's where you need to be if that's what you want, right? We have international fishing tournaments and festivals and a really active Casa de la Cultura, which is the Casa de la Cultura in Mexico is a community center. The idea behind it is if you're great at something, you could teach a class in it and do it at a price that's accessible for everyone. Our Casa de la Cultura is fabulous. We have all sorts of exercise classes and language classes and art and dance and special events and festivals. It's just amazing. Rotary clubs and charity groups, whether it's people, children, dogs, cats, whatever, there are charity groups you can be involved in. We have a group of people that golf every week. We've got book clubs, you name it, okay? It's an active town. Moving to a tourist area of Mexico, language isn't such a big obstacle. Now, understand me, I am not discouraging you from learning Spanish. I'm absolutely encouraging and basically commanding you to do that. But when you get started, it's not like you've moved to another country whereby no one speaks your language, okay? It will help you in getting by until your Spanish gets better. It doesn't make the leap so daunting, all right? But learn Spanish. Not such a great leap anymore either. Okay, now this would have been a different conversation when I came in 1998, but now Cancun has Costco and Sam's Club and Walmart and Home Depot. You can get by, okay? You're not struggling. What else about Porto? I'm 20 minutes from first-class restaurants. I'm a foodie, okay? And all of the venues, first-class venues, apply to El Carmen and Cancun. That was what was a draw for me. What area activities were a draw for me? Of course, the beach. I love our beach. It's white sand, but it's also crushed coral, which means it does not get hot. And I have taken that for granted. This is the only time I've ever lived on a beach. And I have totally taken that for granted. I went to a beach in Florida about a year ago and absolutely had to wear sandals. It was so hot. And I thought, oh, geez, I've been so lucky for so many years to walk on cool sand. I love the Mayan ruins and the Mayan culture. I love the Mayan food. One of my favorite foods is cochinita pibil, a classic, Mayan dish. The ruins surround us, okay? There are various sites. The Mayan language is still spoken in many locations as a first language on our coast and in our peninsula. Golf. If you're a fan of golf, just about any Mexican tourist destination is going to have its fair share of golf courses. In the Mayan Riviera, we're 10 minutes in Puerto Morelos from the Mayacoba Chameleon Golf Course. That is home to PGA's only Mexican tour stop, and I think only international stop, period, but it's certainly the only tour stop in Mexico. Again, snorkeling, diving, kayaking, Puerto Morelos is a mecca for snorkeling, okay? And it has some great dive sites too. Certainly Cozumel and Isla Mujeres have other dive sites. I love that national park and its waters. Boating and fishing. If you're a boat person, you can be in Porto. We have a full-size marina. I do like to fish. My kids love to fish, so I kind of fish by default maybe, but sport fishing in open ocean. And then we also have within a short drive flats fishing where you can do spin and fly fish for barracuda, tarpon, things like that. Again, you might have picked up at this point, I'm a food fanatic. I love Mexican food, and Puerto Morelos has great restaurants. That would be important for any location I would be choosing. Are the restaurants good? So again, just to kind of wrap that up, I've told you what I loved about the place I chose. That doesn't mean that that's going to be your priority list, but it was to help you think about what are your priorities, and then start looking for your destinations. I get asked how to work in Mexico. I probably get at least 2 emails a month about people that want to come down and work in Mexico. And you can definitely work in Mexico, and you've got two options. Both of them require you to have a visa. If you want to work in Mexico, you have to have a visa. You can do that one of two ways. You can open up your own Mexican corporation. I can't encourage you enough to be an entrepreneur, and if you want resources on being an entrepreneur in Mexico, I'm happy for you to tug my ear on that. I can't encourage you enough to do it. And you would be issued a visa that authorizes you to operate your own company. Okay? If you don't intend to open up your own Mexican corporation, then you have to work for a Mexican employer. And if you work for a Mexican employer, they're going to be very familiar with this process. But Mexico doesn't allow you to come down and be destitute with no job and hang out and have to suck off of their resources. So they make you have a job before you get here. So what happens, you might come down and scope out some jobs while you're here on a tourist status, and then you go home and you've got your job offer from your Mexican employer, and they submit that to immigration. Say, we want to hire this person, and we're going to demonstrate that it's a position that an average Mexican can't fill. Now, that used to be a shoo-in if you spoke English. That's kind of changing now because more and more Mexicans speak English. And so really what they love to see is, a certification in something. Are you a yoga instructor or a masseuse, or, some sort of certification that raises you above an average Mexican employee level, okay? That will be pre-authorized. You will complete the pre-visa requirements in the consulate, Mexican consulate of your home country, get your authorization, your provisional visa, and your passport, come down, and they'll finish up your visa cards when you get here. You don't have to have a, when you want to work in Mexico, I hope this makes some sense. I am now working on putting together webinars in this series about opening Mexican corporations and also about visas. We're going to get into them a little bit more in a bit. But so stay tuned if this is a topic that's of interest to you, because I am planning to sort of fill in those gaps with more information for people that are interested. Another common question I get when people start thinking about it is, how are the hospitals? Now, what I can tell you is my experience in Cancun. I can guarantee you, having traveled in Mexico, that you're not going to have a state-of-the-art medical experience in rural Mexico, nor do I think you're probably expecting that you would. Okay? But in Cancun, we have a hospital. It's called Galenia, and it has, certifications that demonstrate that they meet the criteria of American and Canadian hospitals. It's a very, very good facility, and it is available to you. When you travel, okay, and you're thinking about medical services, certainly the cost of medical services in Mexico are less. There's a whole sub-industry of medical tourism where people come down for procedures that they otherwise can't afford in other places, or maybe that are experimental. But when you're just coming down to travel, I want you to be aware that your health insurance may not cover you if you cross a border, okay? And the other thing is so think about the health insurance that you need and the coverage that you need and the time that you need it. And I say that because there are literally hundreds of insurance plans. And there are hundreds of different insurance plans because there are hundreds of different scenarios that they fill, okay? From the person that's going down for a 1 or 2 week trip or a quick weekend and just needs some travel insurance to cover them against emergencies, to people that are living there for extended periods that might go beyond a travel policy but don't really fit into a full-time, to people living full-time, okay? And there is there are just a myriad of options. And so work with an insurance broker, get the coverage that you need. One thing I would recommend, whatever you have, if you have a serious medical issue, you are probably going to want to be medical evacuated to your home country. It is very expensive to have that done, and it is not something you can finance. They require cash up front. So you want to make sure, at the very least, you have catastrophic coverage that also includes evacuation, so that if you are seriously ill or seriously injured, you can go back to your home country. Okay? Beyond that, it's a question of what you're looking at coverage for and for how long. All right? But there are options. They're very affordable. I live here full-time. I have an Aetna Global plan. It's designed for expats that live abroad. Expats that live abroad, it says, as a U.S. citizen, I can only be in the U.S., I can't remember, I'd have to look, so many weeks a year. It's pretty generous. And then I have to live in Mexico the rest of the time. And it covers me for not just emergencies, but I can also go back and see routine doctors back in the States if I want to. So some just cover emergencies, either in Mexico or the other way around, and just cover you for emergencies outside of Mexico and cover you fully in Mexico. So there's really a myriad of options. It really comes down to what coverage you want, and I'm sure there's a plan that does that. Another question, how long can you stay? You do not need a special visa to buy a house, okay? You come down with a tourist visa. That's what the Mexican government gives you. It's that little paper that they rip in half and put half of it in your, or a quarter of it anyway, in your passport and tell you to keep it so that you can give it back to them on the way out. That's your visa to be in the country, and you've checked that it's for tourism purposes. That visa you can request to stay for up to 180 days. At the end of 180 days, you have to leave the country, and you can re-enter, but you've got to leave, okay, on a tourist visa. If you don't want that obligation to leave, then you need a longer-term visa. And there are two types of longer-term visas, temporary and permanent visas. Now, we've already talked about if you want a job, you have to get one of these longer-term visas, okay? They require it because tourism visas don't allow you to receive an income. You're there as a tourist. But if you want to stay more than 180 days and or collect an income, you need a longer-term visa. We are going to have a webinar in April about visas and immigration. I would encourage you to attend if you are interested. Let me give you the short version. Temporary visas are renewable every year. Permanent visas, once you reach that status, do not have to be renewed again. They are quite lovely. I have one, okay? Neither of them make you citizens. All right, you are a resident, a temporary resident, or a permanent resident. You are not a citizen of Mexico. After getting permanent residency status, you can choose to go on and get your Mexican citizenship, and your home country may or may not have policies about that and whether they want you to do that outside of your home country. So that becomes a different issue. But it allows you to stay indefinitely, either one of them, all right? In Quintana Roo, the state of Quintana Roo, I can tell you that they require either a temporary or permanent visa for you to register a vehicle. Now, I have heard that that's not the case in all states, but in Quintana Roo, I can confirm that they do. All right, so if you want to have a car down here at some point and not rent cars, renting a car, you can definitely do it on a tourist visa, but if you want to own a car down here, you do have to have a visa. The other thing is that it allows you to be a local, and you get such great discounts on golfing and activities and all these like places like Xcaret and restaurants and things that it's well worth your time to go get. It's a huge savings. While we're on the subject of cars, let me say, when you have a permanent or temporary visa, like I mentioned, you can buy a car and register it, okay? On a tourist visa, you can, rent a car. What is the other option hanging out there? The other option is hanging out there that you can drive down a car from the US or Canada and do a temporary importation. The temporary importation was designed for somebody coming across the border who's going to tool around Mexico and tool right back out in that car. It is not ideal or designed for people that want to live down here long-term, bring down a car, leave it here, go back, and be done. Technically, your temporary importation permit is expired the moment you leave and you leave your car behind. Okay, it was really designed for tourists to be able to not have to rent a car or buy a car to go tooling around Mexico for up to 180 days. The other thing about it, you signed that you agree to take that car out under all circumstances. So technically, if you get in a car wreck or the engine blows up, you are supposed to be hauling it out of this country, okay? And you can't sell it while it's here. You have to take it outside across an international border, sell it, and then would have to re-import. It is a mess. So if you can't tell, let me say it again. Unless you are planning to come down on a trip of a specific, a particular limited time and drive around in your car and leave again, don't. Get a rental car or buy a car down here. Don't bring down a car. There are so many issues that surround that. That's my 2 cents and my personal opinion. Now you've kind of answered all those questions, okay? We've talked about the things that people always ask, and you go, well, I might be able to do something like this. I might be able to rent for a winter then if I can, if there's shopping that I can do and there's, cars that I can drive and hospitals if I need them and whatever, Well, how do I find a rental or how do I find a house? Use a real estate agent. okay? Use a qualified real estate agent. What do I mean by that? I mean that the industry of real estate in Mexico is a growing industry that is modernizing, okay? I've had my federal certifications for, gosh, it's been, I think, 10 years now. The licensing requirements at a state level are just being passed, okay? It's unbelievable to some people, but real estate agents don't necessarily need to be licensed. And you need to be very, very careful because that is not necessarily a good thing, as you can imagine. The state of Quintana Roo has passed a licensing requirement, and we are all in the middle of getting our licenses, okay? So very, very shortly, licenses will be required and it will be expected, but they're working out how to grandfather us in, et cetera, and we're all kind of in the process. So that is the license process. If you are looking in a particular state and you want to know if there's a licensing requirement, if they've passed that law yet, it is growing, okay? More and more states every year are added to the list of ones that require licenses. I'm happy to help you with that information. One of the best rules of thumb is that if your state does require a license, that your realtor is licensed. Are they an AMPI member? We talked about AMPI. It's the Realtors Association in Mexico. They are peer reviewed. They are subject to adherence to code of ethics. We all receive continuing education, so we're all up on changes in the industry and good guidance for you as far as investment goes. Best rule of thumb, find a member of AMPI, okay? I will say this, if you are a professional real estate agent, I don't understand how you are not a member of the professional real estate agency for the country, right? Like, that just kind of seems like a no-brainer, okay? If you're not, you're probably not serious about doing this for a living. Certifications, do they have them? They're not required, but you might have them. And the other thing is your agent familiar with the market that you're interested in? I say this because sales data is not public in Mexico. So the MLS is very, very different here. It can tell us what's on the market now, but it doesn't tell us for what things sold for in the past, okay? And because it's not public information, that means that your real estate agent becomes your guide on what prices ought to be based on sales that they have transacted. So it's really, really important that your agent is aware of actual market values of what things are selling for. And it's why, if you are interested, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to buy in Puerto Vallarta, great. Let me refer you. I'll find you a great agent in Puerto Vallarta and I'll hook you up with them because I am no good to you in Puerto Vallarta as far as a pricing perspective goes. Okay? So I will refer you to someone that is. I am happy to help. Use me, question me, use me as a resource. I'm happy to help. If you are interested in Puerto Morelos, obviously we would be happy to help you, okay? But if you're looking at a different area of Mexico and you want some guidance and some referrals on real estate agents, I'm happy to help you find one in your area. You know, AMPI creates a network and I can find you somebody. If you are interested in Puerto Morelos, we have real estate listings and vacation rentals featured on our website. Feel free to visit and check them out. I have people say, hey, I'm kind of interested in the Puerto Morelos market. How do I keep tabs on that? Or people follow that blog for all sorts of reasons. I write a blog. It's called Puerto Morelos Blog. On there, I put town events, any town news, major news that affects expats. We kind of, post these webinars on it. Helpful information if you're an expat living in Mexico. We post new listings. We post sold listings. It's a way to kind of keep tabs on town and as a resource for expats living in Mexico. This is, like I mentioned, the first of a series of webinars that we're going to be having in 2017. I'm super excited about this series. We've done webinars in the past, but this is by far the most extensive series that we are doing, and I'm super excited about it. We've done some of these in the past before, but we've either done them just in Porto, where then if you didn't happen to be in town that week, you missed it, or we've done them on webinar, but it's been a few years and there's information to be updated. So we're really hitting it hard this year and doing this, putting together this fantastic webinar series. It is my intention to produce webinars in the one that you're taking, in buying in Mexico. That is already scheduled and on the docket. Selling in Mexico is scheduled and on the docket. Immigration visa process, we've got a great immigration attorney that's going to walk us through that. Title insurance and fideicomisos, we have a great attorney Representative Stewart Title Company, he's going to be putting together that. We're going to put together a rehash. We've done this one before, but considerations for U.S. and Canadian owners. Once you've bought and you're a homeowner, what kind of obligations do you have to report taxes, that type of thing, back in your home country? Okay, we want to answer those questions. Mexican corporations, okay, and I'm still sort of throwing around some ideas on some other topics. So if you are interested in this webinar series, I can't encourage you not to go to the blog. You can subscribe. When you go to the blog site, on the right-hand side, there's a square that says subscribe. You put in your email address and hit I think, subscribe button. It sends you an email to your inbox. You have to click confirm. Once you've confirmed, when we post, it will go to your inbox. I promise you it's not annoyingly frequent, okay? But we will announce all of the webinars on that blog. And we do also, if you look at that blog, you go to that site, up at the top in the menu bar, it says register for 2017 webinars. You can click that and you'll see the lineup there as well. I am going to ask one favor of you. If you have enjoyed this webinar, the primary way that we get word out about this webinar series is word of mouth. And so I can't ask you genuinely enough that if you've enjoyed your webinar, to give feedback. Share it on social media. Invite your friends. I come at this because I am so passionate about Mexico and buying real estate and really educating people so that they have a great experience. And my way to do that is these webinars, but it's only as good as the number of people that see it. And so feel free to share your feedback and encourage people to watch, okay? Invite your friends to our upcoming ones. If you need to contact me, this is my email, that's my website, and that's my blog. Feel free to contact me with any questions you have. Again, if you need help on finding a realtor in your area, if I don't know the answer to the question, I will try to get you to someone who does. With that, I hope you have a wonderful evening. I really want to thank you for joining us. I would love to invite you to our next one, which is really going to get deep in the weeds in buying in Mexico. You are welcome to join us for that, and I hope you have a great night.